What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Finance Friday. I am very happy to have you guys on here. Now, if budgeting gave you problems in 2023, if you failed at it, if it did not work for you, this video is for you, okay? We can't fail at budgeting in 2024 again. You see, one of the reasons that budgeting seems to not work for so many of us is actually because of how it has been taught and how it has actually been presented to us. So we understand it as something that's very hard to do, something that is restrictive, something that you can't do if you don't earn a lot of money. What if I told you guys that budgeting is simply a conscious and intentional spending plan? It is just deciding for yourself based on your values, your income level, what you want to achieve for yourself, deciding what you would want your money to do for you. And in today's episode, I thought, instead of us getting into 2024 with still the old mindsets about budgeting and all the wrong things we did about budgeting, and you're just like, you didn't even put it as part of your goals because it didn't work very well in 2023. Today's episode is all about how you can come up with that very simple and conscious spending plan. The keyword here is simple, doable, applicable, and a budget that anyone can do at any income level. I guarantee you by the time you're done with this video, you'll see, and I'll actually demonstrate it to you practically, that you can budget very well in 2024 and achieve your financial goals. So let's look at that. So in order to come up with a conscious spending plan, you don't start by getting an Excel sheet or a mobile app and just start budgeting immediately. No. That's not where we start. The first thing that you need to do is to figure out what the big picture of your finances really is like, or how it's looking like. So number one, what exactly do we mean by the big picture of your finances? You want to first of all figure out, really, like, as you're starting 2024 or as 2024 has started, where do you actually find yourself today? Do you have a source of income? And how many sources of income do you have? So is your money coming from employment? Of course, if it's coming from employment, then one of the things that you should already know is that unless you lose your job, then you have what we call like a regular source of income or a consistent amount that you get every month. If your business, if your income comes from a business, then you know that you're entering into this conscious spending plan with the knowledge and the understanding that your income fluctuates. And I'm actually going to be showing you guys practically how you can budget even if you have fluctuating income. So that is the most important thing to determine about your big picture. Figure out exactly how much you're bringing in on a monthly basis. And if you have irregular income, one of the tips that I usually like to use, because I also have irregular income, is to actually work with the bare minimum. Of course, I've been in my business for around 4 years now. So by now, I've already been able to track and figure out that on the bare minimum, this is exactly how much my business would ideally make me. So when I'm actually coming up with a conscious spending plan, I don't budget with a very ambitious or a very high figure in mind. I budget with what I consider to be the bare minimum that my business will make me even on a very bad month. So understand where your income is coming from, understand how much it is. Now, still on the big picture, you need to figure out what your current situation looks like in terms of expenses. Do you have debts? Do you have savings? Do you have investments? Would you like to have those things this year in 2024, assuming that you didn't have them in 2023? So start first of all by having a very genuine and a very honest conversation with yourself about where you are financially. Look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at how much money am I spending on, food or fuel. Before you narrow down to those specifics, it's very, very important for you to have the big picture of your finances. One of the things that I have discovered is that when you have the big picture in mind and it's very clear, you're not lying to yourself, then it becomes very easy to know where to start. So let's assume you're looking at a conscious spending plan and you realize, I do not have a source of income. The truth of the matter, guys, is I can't sit here and lie to you that you can budget or plan for money that you do not have. So you see, like, your goal now changes to, first of all, getting a source of income or increasing your income. So what I'm just saying is that if you don't have a source of income, then you need to start, first of all, by getting a source of income. But if you have a source of income, no matter how little it is, that money can be budgeted or planned for. You can come up with a conscious spending plan for that. Because remember, guys, we say that budgeting is telling your money where to go. So even if you have 10,000 shillings only, it is up to you to make a conscious and intentional decision. What would I want this 10,000 shillings to do for me? So that's the first step. So the second thing that you need to really understand before you start coming up with a conscious spending plan is to understand that paying bills and playing catch up every month is not money management. A lot of us think that the moment you get an income, you've paid rent, you've paid transport, you've put, money for utilities aside, then you've done money management. Guys, paying bills is not money management. Money management, paying bills is part of money management, but it is not the entire picture of money management. You're trying to play catch up with bills and, I didn't pay for this last month, so let me pay for this. That's not what money management is. Guys, management is strategic. Does that make sense? It's very, very, very intentional and very strategic, and it is wholesome. It is all-rounded. So here are some pointers that I'd like you to think about so that you can actually start including them in your budgeting, in your planning, or as you're trying to come up with a conscious spending plan. One, part of money management is to identify, all right, what your spending triggers are. Guys, we failed at budgeting in 2023 for some of us because we were not able to put our spending triggers under control. Okay, so part of money management and part of coming up with a conscious spending plan. Remember, please, this word conscious should stick with you throughout today's episode. Conscious means you are aware. You are the one in control. You're the one in charge. Okay, this is not something that's happening to you. You are controlling how your money will be spent and where it will go. So that's the first thing you need to do. Identify what your spending triggers are. Just look at 2023 and every time you impulse purchased or impulse spend your money, what exactly were you spending on and why were you spending on it? So some of the common spending triggers obviously are pressure from in comparison. Listen, guys, as long as you're busy, looking at other people's lives and what they're doing, and social media is highly impacting your money decisions, that could be one of your spending triggers. Another common spending trigger is emotions. When you're bored, you spend. When you are angry, you spend. When you're sad, you spend. When you don't know how to deal with your own personal emotions and things happening in your life, you might find that you have spending triggers. For some of us, it is family. Family is a big spending trigger. If you have a soft heart like mine and you hear that someone you love or someone you care about back in the family, is going through a hard time, sometimes you don't even think, either because of survivor's guilt or because of whatever other reason, you just end up spending. So identify and actually list down what your spending triggers are. The beauty of knowing these things is that as you're now starting to come up with a conscious spending plan, the goal here, remember, is not to eliminate these things, but it is to now start spending on them consciously as opposed to spending on them haphazardly. Okay? So if entertainment is one of those things that you are not able to control, like you cannot for the life of you tell me that, you could even track how much is going to, let's say, entertainment. So a conscious spending plan would now look like, instead of ignoring that budget line, on your budget, ensure that you actually now put a conscious spending plan for entertainment. So let's say 10,000, 15,000, 2,000, however much, and then now track and be very intentional. Okay, so I have, according to my budget and according to my earnings capability, I can only be able to spend 2,000 on entertainment as opposed to the 15,000 I used to spend haphazardly. Now you're starting to become conscious and you're starting to actually take control and decide that this thing is no longer going to control me. This thing is no longer going to steal my financial future. Let me actually put a cap to how much I can spend for entertainment. So understand what those spending triggers are. The other thing that you actually need to know is the bad habits that you must resolve. Some of these things are triggers, they're emotional and mental triggers, but for some of us, we just have bad manners. So in 2024, my encouragement to you is to actually look yourself in the mirror and be very honest with yourself. And we all know the areas where we are just bad-mannered when it comes to spending money. You know it is wrong. And this is one of the things I've been telling people. If for instance, for the whole of 2023, you just kept saying, oh, I can't put a handle on, entertainment, or I can't put a handle on how much I'm spending on alcohol, or I can't, you know what the problem is. It's not like you do not know what the problem is. You know exactly what it is. Some of us, our financial futures are at stake. The futures of our families are at stake because of bad habits and bad behaviors. And the only way to get over bad habits and bad behaviors is to actually call yourself out and to take responsibility. You're an adult. Take responsibility, okay? The other thing that you also need to figure out as you're trying to understand exactly what money management is, other than identifying your spending triggers, other than, understanding what your bad habits are, you also need to now understand, what are the areas in which you are lacking information or you don't have literacy. So many of us have never actually attended even a budgeting class. So as much as you can buy resources, apps, and templates for you to budget, if you don't know exactly how to do that, then you're not going to be able to. If you've never even seen what a typical budget looks like or how it's supposed to be done, then you are not going to actually be able to come up with a conscious plan. If you do not have self-awareness in the areas that you need help, there are people who tell me, I think I'm very, very good at budgeting, but where I don't know how to actually factor things in is when it comes to budgeting for savings or budgeting for investments or even budgeting for debt freedom. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to budget for things that don't happen monthly. You see, for something that happens monthly, all you actually have to do is just plan for it in your salary. But there are things that come up that are non-monthly, things like school fees, random spending in the house or home improvements, things like black tax. Maybe these things don't happen every month, but once every so often you get such a big scary bill coming from non-monthly expenses. So all we've said is that just merely paying bills and writing these are my bills, that is not money management, guys. Money management is actually being actively involved. You know your spending triggers, you know your bad habits, you know your areas of improvement. Okay? Now that we've talked about the basics, it is now time to actually design or create a very clear picture of your finances. And that is now where a budgeting tool comes in. If you have been trying to use either a mobile app for your budgeting, and actually, guys, one of the mistakes I noticed a lot of my clients were making last year is to use mobile apps as budgeting tools. Guys, there's a difference between tracking and budgeting, all right? In the comment section, maybe you can tell me what you think the difference is. I would really, really, really like to hear from you. There's a very big difference between budgeting and tracking. You see, budgeting is done before. It is preemptive. It's what you do the moment your money comes in before you even start spending it. That's exactly what we are trying to come up with today, a conscious spending plan. Tracking, however, is keeping tabs on yourself to see, am I sticking to what I budgeted for? Like if I decided I'm going to spend 20,000 on food and shopping in my household, now tracking is figuring out throughout that month how much you're actually spending or how much you've spent. Now, most mobile apps will help you with tracking, okay? But you see, you cannot track well if you did not budget well. Tracking means that I have a spending limit I've put myself, and that's what a conscious spending plan is. Okay, so budgeting is actually, or coming up with that conscious spending plan is exactly now what showing a snapshot of what your finances are. In other words, now you've actually identified what your money values are. You've identified what is important to you. You've identified the things that are urgent and important. You've identified the things that are time wasters or not important at all in your budget. You've identified the pain areas that you really need to focus on. And now it is actually time to come up with that conscious spending plan. Now, because I really need this to be very, very practical for you guys, I would actually like to take you to the budgeting template that I love to use for myself and also for my clients to show you a step-by-step process of how exactly you can come up with this conscious spending plan on a budgeting template. So let's look at that right away. So guys, I want to just take you through a very brief demonstration of how you can come up with an intentional spending plan. Now, we already said that an intentional spending plan is simply just telling your money where to go. So the first step is you need to figure out how much money are you working with. That's always the first step. Like, your income is always going to be the first step, because again, you cannot plan for money you don't have. And if you don't have clarity to how much money is actually coming in, then you're also not able to plan well. So I would first of all ask myself how much money is actually coming in, right? So if I had a net salary of say 100,000, then I would add that there. Now, if you have maybe business income or side hustle income, then you also want to track exactly how much is coming in. So maybe you have a side hustle that gives you an additional 15,000. Any other additional income, like maybe allowances per diem, girlfriend allowance, wife allowance, you name it. You want to first of all start by figuring out exactly how much money you're bringing in. Now, once you're clear on how much money you're bringing in every month, the other thing that you can do is to now come up with maybe what we are calling like a yardstick for comparison purposes. And I'm going to be showing you why this is important. Now, we already have a budgeting rule of thumb that I like to recommend to beginners. It's just a rule of thumb. You can always play around with it, but it's a good starting point to figure out how you're doing. Now, if I was bringing in 115,000, according to the 50-30-20 budgeting rule of thumb, then 50% of what I earn, which is 115, should cover mandatory bills and expenses, that is needs, and then 30% of everything I earn should cover savings, investments, and debt repayment. So that comes to around 34,500. And then of course 20% of everything that I earn should cover wants, entertainment, giving, and miscellaneous. Okay, so there you have, like, once I'm done doing my budget, I would actually come back here to see, you know, how well am I doing in terms of like living within my means. So this can actually help you figure out whether you're living above your means, below your means, and all that. So step number one, we've figured out exactly how much money is coming in. Step number two, we've used the 50-30-20 budgeting rule to guide us in terms of, you know, this is needs, this is wants, and maybe now we have savings, investments, and debt repayments. If at all you have any debt, then you also want to take that into account. Now, remember, we are coming up with an intentional spending plan, which means that we need to figure out what our spending categories are. Now, I'd already done this prior to me recording this video, so I'm just gonna take you through some of the spending categories or expense categories that are important for you to figure out. Obviously, we like to pay ourselves first. This is very, very important, especially if you would like to develop a spending plan that takes into account savings and investments. You want to take into account things like your emergency fund, your sinking fund, retirement if your employer is not already deducting you that. If you already have children, this is non-negotiable. You need to have an account separate from all your other accounts just to save up for children's needs. So you might want to ensure that your intentional spending plan actually has some savings and investments. Now, I know this is quite a lot, guys. You don't have to have all of them. I would actually recommend that for someone who's starting, you need your emergency fund and maybe your sinking funds. Maybe your home ownership fund can come later. Your shares fund can come later. Maybe even your SACCO and your CHAMAs can come later. But you might want to ensure that you at least have your emergency fund for a start, your sinking funds, and you know, you can actually find some examples of sinking fund costs here. So some of the things we save up for are so for your sinking funds, you actually need what we call the non-monthly spends or short-term projects. So things like school fees are non-monthly, birthdays, home improvements, car insurance. Maybe you want to budget for wardrobe needs, travel. You want to get a beauty procedure done, like microblading your eyebrows. One of the things I need to do myself is to actually get cooking pots, and they're quite expensive. I'm seeing even cooking pots for like 36,000. I want very nice ones. So you want to plan for those things here, and then get the timelines right and what your monthly savings target is. Once you've worked on that, then you know exactly how much money to save there. Now, the second spending category you want to take into account is definitely debt repayments. Again, if your intentional spending plan, if you're trying to come up with an intentional spending plan and you're in debt, you cannot ignore debt repayments. So we also have a category here where you can actually, first of all, start by listing who you owe, how much money you owe them, what exactly the monthly repayment targets are. You could even probably even indicate the interest rates, so that on your planner, on your intentional spending plan, you're able to know which loans you want to prioritize and how much money you want to pay there. Okay, then now you also want to come and figure out what your needs are. So obviously there are bare minimums like rent, food and house shopping, tithes and offerings if you are religious and you value that. If you have children, it is very, very important that you indicate a child spending budget. We are talking things like diapers, snacks, you know, kids come with their own like different expenses every month. So I always recommend, if I have children, one of the things I must do is to have an intentional plan. You can just say maybe it's just 5,000 or even 3,000 shillings for your children, just a spending budget. Maybe you pay rent to 20,000. Maybe your house and shopping, your food and house shopping is maybe 15,000. Tithes and offering would ideally be, let's say, 10% of how much you're making. So that would be 10% of this amount. And you have your tithe there, transport or fuel. So you want to indicate all of those things here. Transaction charges is something else I see people ignoring a lot. And as long as, like, for example, if you're in Kenya and you use M-Pesa a lot for transacting, you probably spend between 1,000 to 5,000 on transaction charges. So let's even put it at 1,000 here. So as you can see, as this person is coming up with their intentional spending plan, they actually have to ask themselves, how much do I spend on internet? How much airtime am I using every month? How much is going to electricity, water, garbage collection? How much am I spending on personal grooming, like the salon or the barber, or your nails or waxing or even medication? So these are the things. And of course, you might edit this depending on what other things have come up. Maybe one of the or you don't have medical cover, but maybe your child does piano classes. So you just add piano classes there if they are mandatory, and maybe you pay the tutor 4,000 per month, then you also want to include that. All right, now up in here, you might want to add things like what we're calling the entertainment budget. So entertainment, giving, and miscellaneous. Now these things were considered needs. For these things, we consider them wants. Okay, so this is where you include your eating out budget, ordering in or takeout. If you value things like drinks and game nights, outdoor activities. Ladies, I know you want to buy your clothes and your skincare and your body products, all of these things. You want to include them there. Now, again, as a disclaimer, I'm going to add, you don't have to have all of these things. I just put them here so that you guys can have an idea of what exactly should actually be in this category. Again, as you're coming up with your own intentional spending plan, the goal is to ask yourself, for example, if I was maybe budgeting for eating out and dates, if I can use my own example, me and my besties meet probably every Friday on a very good month, and say I have a budget of 1,000 bob for every Friday. So if we meet every Friday and I spend that much, I know I'm spending 4,000. I also like to have like a personal date once a month just to spend time with myself or go somewhere nice. Let's assume I even do 1,500 for that. Okay, so if I add this, I know for a fact that for my eating out, I'm working with 4,000. I'm working with 4,000 plus 15.
So I know that my eating out, or rather eating out and dates, could cost me 5,500. Now ordering in, maybe you don't do that. Like personally, I don't order takeout, but if you did, maybe you have kids and maybe once a month you order pizza and it's 1,500, then you can add that in there. Now, as you're coming up with this intentional spending plan, you can see the numbers are actually picking up, and you can see how you're doing in terms of like, so this is how much I'm bringing in, and so far my total expenses have added up to 61,000, and I've still not taken into consideration savings and investments or even debt repayments. Now, guys, the goal is to ask yourself, what would I want my money to do for me? This 115,000. If I take into account savings and investments, debt repayments, mandatory bills and expenses, my entertainment, giving, and miscellaneous costs, what would I want my money to do for me? And actually take the time to figure out. Most of us are not able to do this because you don't know how much you spend for food and house shopping, for example. So you can actually come and use this tab, the food and shopping list, to figure out, for example, maybe you buy fruits and groceries on a weekly basis. List down how much you spend weekly. Perishables, maybe these are weekly. We are talking things like milk, we are talking things like bread, and all that. And then of course maybe you have non-perishable shopping that you probably do monthly. So here we have things like tissue, and we have maize flour, and we have, spaghetti or whatever it is that you shop. So that way you're actually able to add up the figure, and it can help you to figure out what this total figure per month looks like. So again, guys, as you can see, this intentional spending plan is very detailed. Again, you can't come up with it if you don't know your numbers. And even if you don't know your numbers, it's a good starting point. You can start with just a rough estimate, like preempting and writing down what you actually think you spend. And then as the months go by, you start using this annual tracker to actually track the actual spending. So this is what you planned to spend. Okay, this is where your monthly budget planner is, but then you can use this tracker to track how you're doing every month. Like in January, this is how I did. In February, this is how I did. And you can actually now indicate the actual figures that you are spending on each and every category on different months. That way you can actually be able to establish a trend. Let me give you a good example, guys. Let me just highlight the food and shopping bit for a minute and show you guys what this would look like in terms of tracking. So let's say in January your food came to 15,000, and then in February we are talking 22,400, and then in March maybe we've even gotten to 25. If I was doing this monthly, I'd be able to notice an upward trend in my food budget. So I'd ask myself, so why is this amount going higher every month? Is it because we are wasteful? Is it because things have gone up? Is it because, like, you would actually want to investigate why this is going that way? Maybe for your emergency fund, you might want to also track how you're doing. Maybe this January you did badly, you didn't contribute anything. In February, you're a good person, good girl, good guy. You maybe put 5,000, and then maybe in March again you put another 5,000. Maybe in April you put 2,500. Maybe this month you got a bonus or a per diem and you put 10,000. You're actually able to track your progress and see exactly how you are doing. And guys, that is just a simple way of how you can come up with your own intentional spending plan. These numbers aren't fixed on stone, so you can change and adjust them accordingly depending on your spending habits. If you would like to use this budgeting tool to come up with your own intentional spending plan, I'm going to link it down in the description box below so that you can access it. It's only 750 shillings only. Please click the link down below. If you don't already have this tracker, it's a lifesaver and it is very, very useful, as you can see, to come up with an intentional spending plan. So click the link down below to access the same.
I hope the previous illustration has shown you how simple, practical, and doable coming up with a conscious spending plan is. Please let me know in the comment section down below if you have understood, if this has just given you a light bulb moment to see that in 2024 you can have a budget that will actually help you get closer to achieving your financial goals. If you would actually like to access that budgeting template, as I said, I'm going to link it down in the description box below. It is only 750 shillings, Kenya shillings only. It runs, as you saw, from January to December, so you can actually use it throughout the year, both for budgeting and for tracking purposes. So I really, really hope that you guys are actually going to rush and grab that so that your money starts to make sense more. Now, the last step that you need to do in your conscious spending plan is to actually make sure that you're saving and investing enough. And then now you use the rest of your money for what we call value-based spending. What I love to tell people is that when you pay yourself first, listen, you are busy working 8 to probably 10 or even 12 hours a day to pay your landlord, to pay for taxes, to pay utilities, but you're not paying or rewarding the person that is actually putting in all the hours. Now, when budgeting was very, very, very hard for me and very challenging, and when I wasn't able to discipline myself, one of the hacks that I used was I always, I'm still doing that. I think I will do that for the rest of my life. I always save and invest first, especially after you're able to get out of debt. My God, my life changed when I got out of debt because I had now so much disposable income to dedicate to savings and investments. But even at that time, I would still find myself struggling. Now, in your conscious spending plan, one of the hacks that you can use if you're still struggling with self-control and discipline or saying no to yourself or to other people, ensure that on the bare minimum, the first thing that you do is to save and invest. So that 5,000, 10,000, 10% of your earnings that you decided is going to go to your emergency fund or to a certain saving and investing, or rather investment, do that first. And then now, once you've gotten that out of the way, I used to actually realize that I'm calmer. And even if I spend maybe on something I wasn't supposed to spend, at least I know it wasn't at the expense of my savings and investments. It now started being at the expense of my day-to-day expenses. Like I'm going to buy a shoe and then because of that, I won't be able to buy meat that whole month. So I'm eating, skuma and, mbosho. What I'm just trying to say is that it becomes easier to just save and invest first, and then whatever it is that is left, please spend on what I love to call value-based spending. Value-based spending is spending that is based on your own values and whatever it is that you feel is very important to you as an individual. Don't spend because of social media pressure, societal pressure, trying to keep up with the Jonases or to impress people. I kept telling you guys last year, and I'm gonna maintain the same narrative this year. People's opinions do not pay your bills. And most of us are just busy trying to, like, social media is not real. It's not a real place. And so many of us are lying on these apps. So spend based on your own values and your own conviction. So you don't have to own a big car if you've actually never wanted a big car, unless for pressure purposes. You do not have to go out every Friday if that's not something you would ideally do if it wasn't for the kind of circle that you're keeping. So save and invest first. And then for the rest of the money that is left, ensure that you're spending it again consciously, as we looked at in the previous example, and also in a way that is in alignment with your values. All right. So again, guys, if you would like to access the budgeting template that we just used, I'm going to link it down in the description box below so that you can actually access it and start working on your own conscious spending plan in 2024. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. Also, remember to share this video with your friends because in 2024, we are staying financially woke. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Finance Friday.